This is the prerequisite chapter of pre-calculus, looking at complex numbers. We don't have any video in this lesson, it's just be audio, so there's nothing wrong with your computer. We're going to look at dividing complex numbers. We've looked at multiplying and raising to a power, and we've looked at adding and subtracting those. We're now going to look at division, where we actually combine those two or three things that we've already learned, because we're going to need to add, we're going to need to subtract complex numbers as well as multiply them. So in order to divide them, though, we have to know this word conjugate. And the word conjugate might be something familiar that we did last year. If not, we're going to take a look at it right now. And rather than tell you what it is, that's about what you're thinking right now, right? No, I know you're not. You know what it is. But we're going to look at a pattern of numbers. I'm going to give you the complex number and show you the conjugate, and then I want you to determine or figure out how you come up with the conjugate. So here's our number 4 plus 3i. The conjugate of that is 4 minus 3i. Here's the complex number negative 2 minus I, and its conjugate is negative 2 plus I. Then we have the complex number negative I. Its conjugate is I. Have you seen the pattern yet? Negative 3 plus 3i is the complex number. Its conjugate is negative 3 minus 3i. So how do you come up with the conjugate, or what is the conjugate if you know the complex number? What's the pattern? Well, you change the sign of, and this is important, the imaginary part. You don't change the sign of both, because that would be the opposite. You're only going to change the sign of the imaginary part. Notice we have 4 plus 3i, and notice we have 4 minus 3i. The real part on all of these stays the same. The sign of that doesn't change. The only sign that changes is the sign of the imaginary part, from positive to negative or from negative to positive. So that's what the conjugate is, and we're going to need to use the conjugate to do division. Now, the nice thing about multiplying a complex number with its conjugate is that the answer is always going to be a real number. If you were to multiply 4 plus 3i times 4 minus 3i, the i's will always go away. It's always going to be a real number. You won't have any more i's when you multiply a number, a complex number, by its conjugate. And division really, as I said already, is simply getting the I out of the denominator. You can look at it that way, and the way to do that is to multiply it by its conjugate, because then the real number, you're going to get a real number, and the I will go away. Okay, so division is going to make the I go away out of the denominator. So I have 1 plus over 2 plus I. That's a plus sign there. I'm not sure why that doesn't look like a plus sign. Now, we can't have the I in the denominator, so to complete this division problem, it's 1 divided by 2 plus I. We're going to multiply the denominator by its conjugate. Saying, well, here, if we multiply this 2 plus I in the denominator by 2 minus I, that's going to make that denominator not have an I anymore, because we just learned that the product's always going to be a real number. But because it's a fraction, we have to do the same thing to the numerator as well. So division of complex numbers is simply multiplying the numerator and denominator by the conjugate of the denominator. So here you see you have 2 plus I in the denominator. The conjugate of that is 2 minus I. So we multiply that by the denominator. That's going to make the i's go away and give me a real number in the denominator. But then we also have to multiply the numerator by the same thing, because it is a fraction. So when we multiply that, we get 2 minus I over 4 minus I squared. The I squared, remember, is negative 1. So we end up with that real number in the denominator. The I has gone away, as you see. So we have 2 minus I over 5, which we can then split into, okay, so we have 2/5 minus 1/5 I. So really, there's one way to find or to divide complex numbers, and it's right here in the middle, where you multiply numerator and denominator by the conjugate of the denominator. So it simply is applying what you already know about multiplying complex numbers and then simplifying the fraction into its fraction form.